We are now 276 days away from the midterms. It is Friday night, which means it's the nightcap. And we're going to get to it in a little bit. But first, there is a lot of news we need to break down. Today, the Department of Justice released 3 million pages of the Epstein files, a full 6 weeks after the legal deadline. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says the department collected more than 6 million pages, but it's only going to release these 3 million. Federal agents arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, 2 independent journalists who covered the anti-ICE protest at a Minnesota church. And on a day that saw anti-ICE protests across the country, the Department of Justice had a change of heart. They have announced that it will be conducting a civil rights investigation into the killing of Alex Preddy by federal immigration agents. Let's just take a break. I know it is a lot. I know it is exhausting. When I woke up this morning to learn about Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, I had to pause. Not just because this happened after a week of the president pledging to de-escalate the tensions in Minnesota. Not just because multiple judges refused to issue warrants for these journalists already. Not just because they are journalists doing what journalists are allowed by law to do and what's needed by society to do. I had to pause and consider all that happened in just this month. The U.S. military seized the president of Venezuela. The president threatened to invade Greenland. ICE agents shot and killed Renee Good. The DOJ opened a criminal investigation of the Fed chair. The president threatened new tariffs against our closest allies. Border Patrol agents shot and killed Alex Preddy. The FBI raided a critical election hub in the state of Georgia. And now the arrest of 2 journalists. All of this happened in the first month of the year. And the month isn't even over yet. But as the chaos continues, even intensifies, what we cannot do is take our eye off the ball, because all of it is headed to one place 9 months from now, when this administration faces a reckoning in the midterms. But the White House seems less interested in winning over the American people, and right now, more interested in dominating the American people. So instead, we continue to be battered by an onslaught of unprecedented actions with one apparent goal in sight: to defy the Constitution and consolidate power. Let's not take our eye off the ball. All right, let's get smarter and bring in our leadoff panel this evening. Glenn Thrush joins us, Justice Department reporter for the New York Times, former New York prosecutor and civil rights attorney Charles Coleman Jr., and former U.S. Attorney Joyce Vance, who spent 25 years as a federal prosecutor. Charles, it's going to take days and days to get through the 3 million Epstein pages. But given what we've seen so far, and it's only been a few hours, what has stuck out to you?
Well, for me, Stephanie, one of the things that has stuck out is the lack of attention to detail that has been paid by the DOJ.
Even though they took all this time.
Despite all of this extra time that they were given, there were literally copies of victims' licenses that were a part of what was turned over in this Epstein file. Unredacted, which really undercuts the excuse that the DOJ needed all of this time. And please understand, they're going to go back and they're going to say to a judge, in front of a judge, even though they have continuously violated the law with this late production, hey, we need more time because we have to go through these documents, or we should not have to turn over these additional documents. And each time that they do that, when they turn these sort of treasure troves of documents over and they're poorly redacted and they haven't been gone through, it undercuts their credibility yet over and over again.
Joyce, what is the excuse for them being so poorly handled, right? You think when you're going up against the DOJ, that is the biggest, most well-resourced law firm on the planet. What would be the excuse why this is done so shabbily? Is that a word?
Look, there's
Shoddy.
absolutely no acceptable excuse. There's no acceptable excuse for what happened here. And the reality is we saw the Deputy Attorney General take the podium in a press conference today to announce, to admit that the Justice Department remains in violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, owning the fact that there were 3 million more pages that they hadn't yet produced. That's pretty brazen, and I think we shouldn't give them a pass for that fundamental failure. They seem to assume now that they're off the hook because they continue to produce documents. But as you say, Steph, the production has been just unbelievably shoddy and sloppy. And this is the sort of thing that DOJ lawyers and staff are trained to do. You know, DOJ is in the business of these sort of mass productions in civil cases, sometimes in larger criminal cases, too. And this is not the sort of sloppiness that you see in these cases on an ongoing basis. Here it's even more serious because we're talking about protecting victims and witnesses, something that the Justice Department has legal obligations to do. And I would not be surprised if at some point we saw some of the victims and survivors band together and at least make some effort to go to court and ask a federal judge to punish the department for revealing this sort of personal information and compromising them. There are real damages that they suffer, and although the government has a great deal of sovereign immunity for misconduct, here, where it seems that this is so pervasive that it crosses the line from unintentional sloppiness into almost intentionality, given production after production that's been characterized by this sort of relief, these folks who are enduring having their public information compromised, who've said in the past that they're afraid of powerful people who are still out there, are certainly entitled to some sort of a hearing.
Yeah, the powerful people, their names were hidden. It's the victims' licenses who we saw. Glenn, can we stay on those 3 million pages? Does this White House think that because they stood at the podium, right, like my mother when I was in the 5th grade with a "because I said so" and said, yep, there's another 3 million and we're just not releasing them? That does not match the law that Congress passed. Does the White House, does Todd Blanche think him saying you get what you get and you don't get upset, that's enough?
That's a lot to unpack there. I think you've got the dynamic right but it's hard to tell who's the parent.
Like.
Well, it's the problem is it's hard to tell who's the parent and who's the kids. I think this is more of a Montessori school model where everyone's kind of running around and throwing lunch at each other. Look, I think you have a situation here that, and the first thing, there are 2 data points we got to remember here. Number one, Todd Blanche is the president's criminal defense lawyer. He views his role, he's supposed to be running the day-to-day operations of the Justice Department in an impartial way, according to the Justice Manual. He also has this split obligation, which was a big issue when it was that he came up for confirmation that Republicans on the committee glossed over. Blanche has this contradiction where he is also advising President Trump on all kinds of legal and political matters. And of course, infamously, he was the guy who went down to Florida and interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell secretly until pressure built, and they released that. The second issue here is Blanche stood at that podium with a straight face and said, the president of the United States from day one has been the most consistent about wanting transparency and disclosure. It was my recollection. It was my recollection this entire summer that Mike Johnson kept essentially the House of Representatives out of session so that they could dodge having to pass this bill, which forced DOJ to do this. So, like, this is a huge political issue for DOJ. They didn't want to do it. And I will throw in a third bullet point. They don't have the bodies. They have seen a mass defection of all of these extraordinarily qualified career attorneys who have been driven out because of the politicization of the department. So you have this like witch's brew of circumstances that has led to this delay. And, you know, this is why you hear people on the House side, mostly Democrats, but some Republicans, talking about potential impeachment of some of these senior Justice Department officials. It is a mess.
All right, let's talk about Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. Charles, first, what are they accused of? What are they being charged with?
So there are 2 statutes a part of this indictment, Stephanie. One of them is a statute that comes out of the KKK Act, which is an antiquated law, and it basically, to say the least, and if it weren't so enraging, it would actually be utterly hilarious in terms of the irony, in terms of how it's being used in this case. It is a law and a statute that says that you cannot conspire to threaten, injure, bully, or harass someone in impeding their constitutional right regarding a place of worship, for example. And this is in direct contradiction with what we have seen already from the tape of Don Lemon in that church, in the audio where he says, look, I don't want to harass anyone. I'm stepping around the order. I'm stepping out of the way.
You see him say it on camera.
It's very, very clear, Stephanie. And then the second act is an act which comes out of 1994, which was essentially an act that is intended to prohibit people from harassing individuals who are attempting to stop people going into clinics where women are seeking reproductive rights. And then as the law was passed, places of worship were added onto it. So this is very flimsy because in the first act, you need a certain conspiracy between two individuals, which is loosely made out through the indictment, to say the least. And in the second case, you need a certain level of physical intimidation and obstructing the passageway through. And in both cases, if you watch the video, if you listen to the audio, Don Lemon is extremely clear in saying, I don't want to disrespect anybody, don't want to harass anybody, I'm staying out of the way. He says this repeatedly, I'm just here asking questions. And so the DOJ knows that they don't have the evidence to move forward here. But let's just cut to the chase. This is not about a conviction any more than it was about a conviction with James Comey or Letitia James.
It's a scare tactic.
The punishment is the process itself. It is not only the embarrassment that they seek to impose upon Don Lemon, but it's also the message that they intend to send throughout the industry, the chilling effect that they hope to have on other journalists who are doing their job.